We're gonna jump back into doing linear equations. Last time we left off doing linear graphs. We're just gonna do a quick review of everything we've learned in this unit. Moving forward, there's gonna be a lot of algebra. The entire thing is algebra, pretty much. Let's look at this question. So this person has $10 to buy apples and pears. And it says, use each representation to determine the possible amounts of each fruits she can buy. All right, in this question, what's going to be the equation? What is x?
2.84x plus 2.18y.
Yeah, so this is going to be our equation. 2.48x plus 2.18y is equals to 10. Yeah, like that. That's the answer to part C. To make a table, you plug x as any value, right? You can plug x as a 0, then you will get y as 4.59. You plug y as 0, so this thing disappears, then you do 10 divided by 2.84. Then you would get this guy as 3.52, okay? There's an infinite number of points here. Look at this. If x is 1, then y will be 10 minus 2.84 divided by 2.18. 3.28, right? Like that. If x is 2, it'll be 10 minus 2.84 times 2 divided by 2.18. This will be 1.98, like that. So that's our table, okay? The easiest way to graph this, again, these numbers are not nice, but the easiest way to graph this, instead of finding the slope and the y-intercept, I think is just using the intercepts that we have here. So let's say this is our x-intercept, 3.52. Let's say this is our y-intercept, 4.59, and you kind of connect them. We're not really interested in the other three quadrants here because these are both kilograms of fruits. They cannot be negative, so we don't really care about the negative quadrants. This here, this combination, any combination here, any point on this line is a combination of x and y. And that's how much she can afford with $10, okay? Pretty simple question. So he downloads music from a site that charges $12.95 and 45 cents per song. What would be the equation in this case? So this one's gonna look some in this form. It's gonna be y equals the $12.95 is going to be the flat fee that he has to pay regardless, and the 45 cents will be the slope, okay? Because the bill depends on how many songs he downloads. So that's the first equation. The other equation is this, y equals, again, this is fairly simple, 8.99 plus 0.95x, yeah? It says compare the costs. So if you were to graph this out, right, I'm going to quickly find the POI. To find the POI, just set the two equations equal to each other. So in this case, where they meet is going to be 12.95 minus 8.99 divided by 0.95 minus 0.45. So when x is 7.92, which would mean y is going to be 16.51. So this is where they meet, okay? So what's actually going on in this question? We have the first, this one, okay, this site, which has a higher y-intercept, but it has a lower slope. So let's say this is the graph for the first line. This guy down here, it has a lower y-intercept, at 8.99, but it has a higher slope, yeah? Like this.
Mhm.
And this is the point that we found. That was the point of intersection. That's 7.92 on the X, and on the Y, it's 16.51. So let's say this one is graph 1. Let's say this one is graph 2. Which one is better? Which one should he go with?
The first one.
So this one's a little bit tricky. He should go with the second one if he's downloading less than 7.92 songs. Because we're trying to minimize the bill, right? So he should go over here if he's downloading less than 7.92. If he's downloading exactly 7.92 songs, then it doesn't matter. They're both equal, okay? Exactly 7.92, both the lines are equal. And he should go with line 1, this guy, if he's downloading more than 7.92 songs. So there's 3 cases here, and this is going to be the case every single time when you're comparing 2 different graphs, right? 2 different lines. One of them is going to win initially, they're going to meet somewhere, and then the other one's going to win later on. The only exception to that is if they both have the same slopes, right? What if we do a quick here? Let's say this is graph 1. It has the exact same slope as this. This is graph 2. This one has a higher y-intercept. Which one should we go with?
Graph 1.
Yeah, you should go with graph 1 because that's the one on the bottom. And that one's always going to be cheaper than graph 2. Right. Another seems like a fairly straightforward question. So on the x-axis we have sales, and on the y-axis we have earnings. So question A, what does the coordinate 1500, 360 mean? What does that mean in the context of this question? This appears to be like a commission-based job. What that means for her is that if she makes $1,500 in sales, okay, her weekly earnings will be $360. That's it. If you make $1,500 in sales, the amount you earn per week that she takes home is going to be $360. B, use the graph to determine what Sally earns when her sales are $3,200. So we need to use the graph, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 5 makes 1,000. That means each individual box represents 200, okay?
Mhm.
So 3,200 would be right there on the X. That's going to be 3,200. This one's not going to be precise, I don't think. So we're going to pull this up, and we're going to pull this across like that. On the y-axis, each box represents $50 because 2 boxes make 100. So if this is 450, what's her earnings for 3,200? Looks like it's going to be, again, it's not very precise, 425, okay? Approximately, and that's always going to be the case whenever you're trying to get some information from a graph. It's going to be an approximate value, unless of course the numbers are small and you can graph them well on a grid. C, use the graph to determine what Sally needs if she wants to earn $450. Very simple question. Instead of going from the X now, we go from the Y. So if she wants to make 450, right, like that, and then we see where it touches the line. I would say somewhere there it touches the line. And what's that amount? Remember, each box is $200 on the X, so this is 3,400, 3,600-ish. Okay, a little bit higher than 3,600. check your answers for B and C algebraically. All right, so we can do that. How do we find the equation in this case? How do we get an equation from a graph? Any ideas? You have the y-intercept, that appears to be $300, right? All you need now is the slope, and then you'll have the equation. So to find the slope, we don't know any other point except this one here. We're going to use this to find our slope. So the rise from 300 to 360 is 60, yeah? And the run is 0 to 1500, it's 1500, like that. So our slope is 2 over 50. 6 over 150 means 3 goes into 6 twice. 3 goes into this 50 times, or you can even go further. You can say it's 1 over 25. That is our slope. So therefore our equation is 1 over 25x plus 300, okay? So to do answer part B algebraically, we're gonna plug 3200 as the x value. So 1 over 25 times 3200 plus 300. So let's see what this gives us. So 3200 divided by 25 plus 300, the answer is 428 exactly, which is next to impossible to get from the graph. Part C, now we're gonna plug y as 450 to see what the x value should have been. How do you solve this linear equation for x?
You subtract 300.
Yeah, you'd first subtract 300 and then you multiply by 25. So that means x is gonna be 3750, okay? And that's how you check your answer. Doing it algebraically is always gonna be precise compared to a graph, but we know that. These are the questions they're gonna throw at you in a test, because if they give you a graph, or if they give you equations, it's pretty easy to deal with, right? It's just linear. We've done hundreds and thousands of these, but they're not always going to give you any one of those things. You need to come up with the equation, which is going to be the hardest part in any question. So there is a rectangle, okay? We need to come up with the equation for its perimeter. So let the width be width, right? Width be W. That's what I meant here. Width be represented by W, okay? So width is W. If that is 8 centimeters less than its length, yeah? What is the length in terms of its width? It's gonna look something like this. So width is W, okay? We know that the length, we know that the width is 8 centimeters less, yeah? Which means you take your length value, okay? You subtract 8. Like that, you're gonna get width. Or if you add 8 to your width, that's gonna give you your length. See that? Why is this important? Because we want to deal with one variable, especially when it comes to solving an equation, which part B will be. So therefore, the length is going to be W plus 8. Cool? So that means this is going to be W plus 8. This is going to be W here because it's a rectangle. What's the perimeter of this rectangle in terms of W?
Or W.
Just 4W?
Plus 16.
Yeah, plus 16, like that. That's the perimeter. And we know the part B, the perimeter is 72, like that. 72 minus 16 is what? 56. Therefore, W is 14. That means the length is going to be W plus 8, so it's going to be 14 plus 8. It's going to be 22, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So here the crucial thing, the most important thing here is this guy right here. You come up with the equation for length in terms of W. Okay, so this guy is planning to invest to make $100. He puts his money in an account that pays 4% per year, and he'll use the rest of his money that pays 5% per year. So he's putting it into two different things, okay?
Mm-hmm.
He has some money, which we don't know what it is. He's gonna put some of it in, looks like a savings account, and then he's gonna put some of it in a GIC, which is kind of like an investment. The G there stands for guaranteed, okay? So this one, if you put it in GIC, you won't lose money. Compared to putting it in some things like stocks. Stocks, they go up and down, right? Depends. Usually most of them go up over time, but you never know. But GIC is always going to go up. You never lose money in that. So that's what that is. Write an equation for his situation and draw a graph. So this one, the equation, coming up with the equation is probably the most difficult part here. What do you think the equation will be? So let's say he puts X dollars into the savings account and he puts Y dollars into the GIC. Now we just gotta use the numbers. In the first account, he's gonna make 4%, which as a decimal is 0.04x. This is the interest that he earns for 1 year in this account, okay? The next equation is going to be 0.05y because 5% in GIC, like that. This is his total interest earned. Therefore, that should be equals to 100 because that's what he wants to make in 1 year. Okay? Does it make sense?
It does.
So that's the equation here. I'm going to quickly find the x and the y-intercepts because they are asking us to graph it. Just remember, to find the x and the y-intercepts, just plug the other guy as 0. So 100 divided by 0.05 will be 2000. It's our y-intercept, and then let's find our x-intercept. I think this is going to be 2500, like that. Therefore, a very rough sketch here, 2500 is here. This is the amount he puts in the account. 2000 is here. This is the money that he puts into a GIC. And that is the graph there. Cool?
Mm-hmm.
What's the slope of this graph? From 2000, right? What's the rise here?
It's 2000.
It's 2000, but it's going to be negative because we're going down, and the run is 2500, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So you get negative 4/5. That's our slope. Therefore, the equation here, we already know what the y-intercept is, 2000. It's going to be negative 4/5x plus 2000 would be the equation, okay? To answer part B, Suppose he puts 1500 for GIC, how much would he need to put? And this is a very rough sketch. 1500 is a little bit more than halfway. Which one was GIC? GIC was the Y. So 1500 is a little bit more than halfway. Maybe that's 1500. You go across here, you come down across here, and that'll be the answer to part B. We can do this using any of the equations. So if he puts 1500 in the GIC, right, we're gonna find out how much he needs to put in the savings account. Again, a linear equation, very simple. Subtract 2000 and divide by -4/5. That's 2000 divided by -4/5. The answer is 625, okay? So if he puts $15 in there, he needs to put 625 into this, into the X. Same thing for part C. Part C, now he's putting $2,200 in the X. How much does he need to put for the Y? Very simple. Just plug X as $2,200, like that. So -4 divided by 5 times 2,200 plus 2,000. That means he just needs to put $240 in the other account. Cool? So the hardest part, again, in this question is this part right here, coming up with this equation. Once you have this, everything is very straightforward because it's just a linear equation, right? You can graph this easily. All the math is also very simple, but coming up with this is the trickiest thing. It says solve each linear equation. I don't know how they want us to do it. I think they want us to graph it. Just gonna do a couple of them. So you can do this any way you want, okay? We're gonna see next how to do this using substitution, which we've seen before, but I think here they want us to graph it. To graph it, you don't necessarily have to be in the form of y equals mx plus b. You can just make a table of values. Look at this. For C, the first equation, for this equation, if y is 0, what's x? In this equation, if y is 0, what's x?
It's 1.
It is 1, yeah. Now if x is 0, what's y? For the same equation. It's -3, okay? If x is 0, you ignore that. Negative y equals 3, y will be -3. It's because we need to graph this, that's why. So 1, 0 is here. Let's say this is our x-intercept. 0, -3 will be down there. We're just going to join them. We're going to extend them, and that's going to be that. That's the first equation. For the next equation, we're going to do the same thing for this equation. Again, it's very simple. Look at this. If y is 0, right? If y is 0, x will be 1. And if x is 0, what's y?
It's 2.
It's 2, yeah. So the other equation is 1, 0, which is right there. And then the other one is 0, 2, which is up here, like that. And then you connect them. And that's going to be our POI. So the answer to that system, okay, to this system, is that point right there, which is 1, 0. So that's the answer. X is going to be 1 and y is going to be 0. Okay, how do we know this? It's because that's where they meet right there. Cool. That's how you do them graphically. Don't want to be, everything there is the same. Just graph them. Let's move on to question 8. All right. So there's 323 total tickets and they made $790. we have the price for students and non-students, and it's asking us to find how many students and non-students went to this show. Write a system of two linear equations for this situation. Again, it's important here what's x and y. What's x and what's y in this case?
The amount of students and non-students.
Yeah, x is students, y is non-students, right? So what's the first equation? 323. We know students plus non-students, they add up to 323, right? That's the first equation. What's the second equation?
2x plus 3.5y equals 790.
Yeah, it's equals 790, okay, like that. So that's the answer to part A, right? A system of two linear equations. Part B, solve by graphing. This one's going to be very painful because of the 790 there, right? So this one, you can always graph it. And the 323 is also a weird number. So we're not going to do that. I'm just going to show you the answer here really quickly. So the answer to this question is this 227 and 96, okay? You graph them and you find the POI. But usually what happens is questions like these, it's not easy to graph. So you're gonna double check your answer by doing this algebraically. How do you do this algebraically? You're gonna do substitution, okay? Take any of the equation, throw one of the variables to the other side. I'm taking the first equation and I'm substituting this for x, okay? Here. And then you're gonna take this equation, dump it into the second equation, which means the second equation now looks like this. How do you solve this linear equation? There's only one variable in it. Now this becomes a linear equation. No? You open the bracket, okay? Open the bracket, combine the like terms. 2 times 323 is 646 minus 2y plus 3.5y is equals to 790, like that. Negative 2 plus 3.5y is they're going to add up to plus 1.5y. Throw 646 onto the other side. 790 minus 646, the answer is 144. Divide both sides by 1.5 to get the answer. Y is going to be 96. Therefore, x is going to be 323 minus y, which is 96. And it's going to be 227. So therefore, 227 students and 96 non-students went to this art show. Yeah? Did this make sense to you? Hopefully it did. So coming up with these two is not that difficult, right? But you need to be able to solve this linear equation right here, which isn't that bad. You just open the brackets, combine like terms. Yeah. And this one, graphing this is very painful because of this equation, right? 323, you'd have to go up in terms of 50-ish, and you don't know where the 323 is exactly, so that may not give you the right answer. So this is what we have here. Suppose you're solving the system this and this, where m and n are integers. So basically, the y-intercept is missing here. We don't know what that is. And this is also, you can't really solve this equations because there are 4 variables, but you only have 2 equations. You can only solve for the number of variables you have in those equations. So we can solve for x and y using 2 equations, but not x, y, m, n. So y, we don't know what m is, right? It's an integer. Integer can be both positive and negative. So let's assume it's something like this. That's our m value. And this equation, if you were to rewrite it, it becomes 3x minus n, which means, again, the slope we know, but we don't know the n. So let's assume this is the n, and the slope is 3. So as you can see there, it can definitely have a solution in the first quadrant, right? If m and n look like this. But what if m is down here? Like that. Maybe you can make n down here as well. That one isn't that good. Like that. You can have a solution in the fourth quadrant as well, okay?
Mhm.
What about the second quadrant? Second quadrant looks to be tricky. So we want 2 lines to meet here and here, second and third quadrant. But our slopes are positive, right? So let's say this is n, and maybe this is m. It looks like it can have a solution in the third quadrant as well, which probably means there is a way you can kind of shoehorn it into the fourth quadrant, or sorry, the second quadrant. Or maybe not, let's see. I don't think it's gonna pass through the second quadrant. Oh, it will. If both of them are up here, if m and n are both up here, then I think it should pass through the second quadrant as well. Yeah, there we go. So it can pass through all 4 quadrants. Cool.
Mhm.
And here again, it's impossible to find what m and n really are because there's not enough information in the question. So this is more like a T question, like a thinking question. Let's move on to something else. Let's move away from the graphs, basically. This one. What's the equation? There's going to be 2 equations here. One for Marla, one for Nancy. What's the first equation? Where x and y
X plus
is,
y equals 38.
yeah, super simple, right? X plus y equals 38. The other one is going to be 10x plus 12y equals 412, right?
Mhm.
You could graph this. We're not going to do that. Substitution. You can solve for either x or y, doesn't matter. Like that. That's our y. We're going to replace that y with that equation. So you have 10x plus 12 times 38 minus x equals 412. How do you solve this equation?
You open the brackets.
Yeah, you open the brackets. So this will be 380 plus 76, or 456 minus 12x is equals to 412. 10x minus 12x becomes negative 2x. 412 minus 456 becomes negative 44. Therefore, x is 22. Plug that up here. Y will be 38 minus 22, 16. So Marla played for 22 hours. Nancy played for 16 hours. And that is it. Right? Once you come up with the equations, it's pretty simple. Oh, this one's gonna throw you off big time. Because this one has percent. It's very similar to the last question. There's gonna be two equations, and we just do substitution. So I'll give you what your X and Y is. Your X is this alloy here. 84% gold is your X, okay, the mass of that. Your Y is this other alloy, 75% of gold. Which means, right, there's going to be two equations. The first equation is this. The alloys, when you add them up, the two different ones, they have to add up to 15 grams. That's the first equation, okay? Now the second equation is tricky. What do you think the second equation is? A hint would be to look at the numbers that we haven't used. There's some numbers in there that they've given us that we haven't used. It's gonna look like this. The 84, yeah, go ahead.
0.84x plus 0.75.
What about on the other side?
Is it 0.
So look what you're doing here, okay? I'll give you a hint. Percentage times grams. Percentage times grams, yeah? So that means on the other side of this equation, you're gonna have percentage times grams, like that, okay? This one is the grams equation, the mass equation. This one is the actual gold, how much gold there is. So that's the equation here. Always use up all the numbers that they've given you, okay? And the second thing is, this is gonna be a big deal when you do physics later on. You can always look at the units. They will always match up. The unit for X, right? X is just mass. In this case, it's grams. The unit for Y is mass. It's gonna be grams. We know 15 is grams. So this one checks out, right? Down here, though, we're multiplying percent with grams. Percent with grams. That means on the other side, there's also gonna be a percent with grams, okay? Like that. How do you solve this linear equation? Again, very simple. You sub X or Y, it doesn't matter. So X becomes 15 minus Y. So you have 0.84, 15 minus Y, plus 0.75 Y, and 0.8 times 15, that is 12. How do you solve this linear equation? You open the brackets, right? That's the only thing you can do. Just open this bracket. So you get 0.84 times 15, which is 12.6, minus 0.84 times Y is 0.84Y, plus 0.75Y is equals to 12. So it's going to be 12 minus 12.6 divided by negative 0.84 plus 0.75. So Y is 6.67 grams. Plug it back in here to find your X, which is 8.33 grams. And that's the final answer for this question. Cool? most important thing here is this, what goes on the right-hand side of this equation. We didn't have to worry about this for other equations because we didn't have a percent component. Not really, but this one we do, so keep that in mind. The units needs to align. Okay, her startup cost is $10.45, and she'll use about 50 in materials for each pant, and she'll charge $10 for each pair of pants. How many pair of pants does she need to break even? What does break even mean?
She actually starts to make profit.
Yeah, she's not gonna have any profit, but she's also not gonna be in loss. Okay, she's gonna make up her initial costs. That's what it is. We're gonna get two equations here. The first one is gonna be the cost. Okay, using these two numbers, what's the equation? Like this. So this is her cost, right? Depending on what X is, how many pairs of pants, this is how much it's gonna cost her. Okay. The next one is going to be revenue. Revenue means the money she makes, right? There's only one number here for revenue. She's gonna make $10 for each pair of pants, like that. Okay. How many pair of pants does she need to break even? Now what's happened here is this is your cost, which has a very high y-intercept or a very small slope. This is your cost equation. And then this is your revenue equation, which has a y-intercept of 0, but has a very high slope. Like that. You see at this point, they both meet, yeah? At that point, both the revenue is equals to the cost, and that's what we're trying to find. We're trying to find what this point is. How do we do that? How do we find a POI between two equations?
You set them equal to each other.
Yeah. So you do this, you're gonna get 9.5x is equals to 1045. If you want to see the steps, it's just this 0.5x plus 1045 is equals to 10x. Subtract 0.5, you're gonna get 9.5x is equals to 1045. Divide both sides by 9.5. So the answer is 110. So if she hems 110 pair of pants, she is going to break even, okay? Look at what's gonna happen after this. Before 110, she's gonna be losing money because the cost is higher than the revenue, yeah? So during this chunk here, she's gonna be losing money. At exactly 110, break even, they're both equal. And then beyond 110, the revenue starts winning, yeah? She's gonna start making money after this here. Anything greater than 110, she's going to start making money, okay? And that's the answer to that question. This one, it says determine without graphing where these two intersect. Now this one's gonna be an annoying question simply because you're gonna end up with some fractions. What should we do? It doesn't matter which one you pick, you're gonna do substitution. It honestly doesn't matter because you're gonna end up with prime numbers on the bottom. I'm gonna use this guy here. So 2y is going to be -2 minus 5x. Again, your goal when doing substitution is to write one variable in terms of the other, okay? Just solve for one of the variables in the very beginning. So that means y is going to be negative 2 over 2 is negative 1. Negative 5 over 2 is just negative 5 over 2x. That is what our y is. Okay, we've solved for one variable in terms of the other. Next, you're going to plug this as y into the second equation right here. That's a substitution component. It's going to end up looking like this. 2x minus 3 times negative 1 minus 5 over 2x is equals to negative 16. How do you solve this linear equation for x? You're going to open the bracket. What do you get if you open the bracket?
Negative 3 minus 15 over 2.
So negative 3 times negative 1 is positive 3. Negative 3 times negative 5 over 2 is plus 15 over 2x. Okay, like that.
Mm-hmm.
Throw the 3 to the other side, you'll get negative 19. So that 3 is gone, and between this guy and this guy, you're gonna take the LCD, okay? So that means you need to multiply this guy, which has a denominator of 1 by 2 up down here and up here as well. So you get 4x plus 15x over 2 is 19. So you get 19x is equals to negative 38. That means x is going to be negative 2. Then you're going to plug that x back in this y equation to find what y is. Negative 5 over 2 times negative 2. This becomes negative 1 plus 5, which is 4. Therefore, these two lines, they're going to intersect at negative 2 comma 4. And that's the final answer. Make sense? Again, it's a substitution question, but in this case, we're dealing with fractions, and expect these kind of questions on your tests, because the numbers are not always going to be nice. Here, let's do this. It says isolate for the indicated variable, okay? This is the equation they've given us. They want us to isolate for x, which means we're going to have x on this side. Everything else is going to be on the other side. How do we isolate for x in this question?
Subtract.
Yeah, we can start by subtracting y. And then? You see that 1 over 2? We need to get rid of that. You would multiply both sides by 2, okay? Multiply both sides by 2. Cool? That's the only way to get rid of that 1 over 2. Or you can divide both sides by a half. That will also do the trick. This means x is going to be 20 minus 2y. And that's the final answer for that question. This one's a long question. So you can wash two types of vehicles. You can wash cars, which is going to be our x. You can wash vans, which is going to be our y. Look at the numbers they've given us. They've given us 53, 382, 6, and 8. What are the two equations?
X plus 1 is 53.
Yeah, x plus y equals 53. That's the answer to part A, the number of vehicles washed. Part B, write an equation to determine the money.
6x plus 8y equals 382.
Right, that's it, right? C, solve for one of your variables in part A. Okay, we're just gonna say y is equals to 53 minus x. That's the answer to part C. Part D, substitute your expression in part C into the equation for part B and solve the new equation. So it's just asking us to shove this y in here. So 6x plus 8 times 53 minus x is equals to 382. How do you solve this for x? Gonna open the bracket, yeah? That's it. That's the whole thing. With substitution, step 1 is always going to be to open the bracket. 424 minus 8x is 382. This means negative 2x is 382 minus 424. Negative 42. This means x is 21. Plug that back up here to find your y. So it's going to be 232. And that's the answer to this question. 32 vans and 21 cars were washed. Yeah? See how long this looked, A, B, C, D, E, but it's actually not that bad because every single thing is like 1 or 2 steps. The longest was this one here to find that x. That was the longest part, but even this is fairly straightforward. Open the brackets, isolate for one of the variables. This one, it says so solve for one of the variables, which is the same thing as isolate for one of the variables. Now here we need to isolate, it says for x. How do we do this? Isolate means we need to throw everything else onto the other side of the equation.
Subtract 1/2 times y.
So let's do that. 1 over 3x is equals to 5 minus 1 over 2y. What's next?
You multiply by 3.
Perfect, that's exactly what it is. X is gonna be 5 times 3 is 15, and 1 over 2 times 3 is 3 over 2. Okay, like that. So when you're multiplying by 3, there's an invisible bracket that comes up here. A very common mistake people do is they don't put that bracket there, and then they say it's 15 minus 1 over 2y. Or they say it's 5 minus 3 over 2y. They only multiply one element with 3. That's wrong. Okay? You multiply both elements with 3. So this is wrong. This is good. Multiply this by the 3. Multiply that by the 3 as well. But not the denominator though. Here, look at this. What's 2 over 3 times 3? All right, let's make this 5. What is this equals to?
10/3.
Yeah, 10 over 3. Okay? There's an invisible denominator of 1 here. It's not. Another common mistake is people say that's 10 over 15. No. You're only going to multiply the numerator in that case. I'm looking for like the percent type question. Yeah, this one right here. Remember the trick, okay? So we have 80% silver, which we're gonna say is X, and then we have an alloy. Alloy is just a mixture of metals, okay? So let's say this is a metal alloy. 80% of this is gonna be silver, okay? The rest can be anything. It can be iron, steel, not iron preferably because iron rusts. It's probably gonna be steel or something like that. That's what it is. So this part, 80% of this block is going to be silver, okay? And the other 20% is whatever. Same thing with the other one. 66% of the block is going to be silver. The rest is whatever. It's not like divided like this. There's no boundary in there. what usually happens is that 66% of the molecules in here is silver, and the rest 34 is something else. So anyways, what are the two equations here?
X plus Y equals 30 grams.
Yeah, x plus y equals 30. We can just isolate for y. Y equals 30 minus x. What's the second equation? You need to use these.
0.8x plus 0.66y equals 0.7 times 30.
Yeah, 0.7 times 30. Right, and the units make sense. We're on the right path here. I'm going to substitute that y in here. So you get 0.8x plus 0.66 times 30 minus x, and this is going to be 21. 70 times 30 is 21. Here, open the bracket, so you get 0.80x plus 0.66 times 30 is going to be 19.8 minus 0.66x equals 21. 80 minus 66 is 0.14x, and 21 minus 19.8 is 1.2. Therefore, x is going to be 1.2 divided by 0.14, which is going to be 8.57 grams. Plug this back up here to find the y, the other silver alloy, which is 21.43 grams. And that is the end of this question. Okay, very straightforward, right? Once you have the equations, just shove them into each other and you're pretty much done. All right, let's call it a day.
Thank you.